Hello, my name is Christy Miller and I'm going to be demonstrating a practical life lesson for your 3 to 6-year-old students for making bread in a bread machine. This is a great lesson, especially for a day when you can't get outside and you need some extra small group lessons, or for your kindergartners that might stay longer than the rest of your class. This lesson promotes concentration, coordination, order, and independence. It also promotes taking turns, physical movement from bringing the ingredients, following a multi-step procedure, and also beginning measurements and foundational math skills. So let's get started. As with any practical life lesson, the first thing we need to do is get our apron. And we want to have our students put on their aprons as well. And typically when you're baking, you start with the dry ingredients and then you add your wet ingredients. But when you're baking bread in the bread machine, you actually do the exact opposite. So let's get started with our wet ingredients. First, we need 9 ounces of water, and this needs to be neither too cold or too hot, just tepid room temperature water. And I use the measuring cup that was provided with the bread machine to do this. So I've pre-measured the water and put it into a glass pouring measuring cup so one student could come over to the table and pour in the water. Nine ounces of water. Next, we would need 2/3 a cup of yogurt. This is the secret ingredient, as it keeps the bread moist and also adds some extra nutrition. You'd want to make sure that no one in your class has dairy allergies, or you'd want to switch it, or that they were vegan. So we need 2/3 a cup of plain yogurt. Next, we would have a student or multiple students cut the butter. We need 2 tablespoons of butter, and we need it divided into 4 pieces. So we'd have a student practice their cutting, and the 4 pieces go in each corner of the bread machine. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now another student can come and begin the flour. Now, when you're making bread in a bread machine, you don't want to scoop your flour out with the measuring cup. You actually want to use a large tablespoon and spoon the flour into the measuring cup. Keeps the flour from packing down too much. So this will be 1 cup of flour, and we're going to level it off with the back of the butter knife. And this recipe calls for bread flour and wheat flour, and I've already pre-measured the rest of the flour. So it's 1 1/2 cups of bread flour and 2 3/4 cups of wheat flour. And I also added a little 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed for extra nutrition, kind of to take the place of a little bit of the wheat flour. So you're going to make sure it's all spread out in the pan. And then we have a few remaining dry ingredients after the flour. We have 2 tablespoons of brown sugar packed. And I actually made this brown sugar myself using 1 cup sugar and 1 cup molasses ratio. So we want the 2 tablespoons to be packed of the brown sugar, exactly the opposite of the flour. So we can have a student add the brown sugar. And next we need our salt. So we need 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt. And I've got a 1/2 teaspoon measuring, so that would be 3 half teaspoons. So we can have our students figure out how much salt to add. Okay, and then the final ingredient, the most important, is the yeast. We actually have bread machine yeast, but you can also use regular active yeast, but it's a different measurements. So make sure that you double check. First, we would have a student use a spoon to dig a small hole in the center of the loaf pan. And then we would have them get 2 teaspoons of bread machine yeast. And we want to make sure that we are supervising the amount of yeast. It needs to be very precise. So I'm using the 1/2 teaspoon, so that'd be 4 1/2 teaspoons of bread machine yeast. And again, I double check the student who measures the yeast. The other ingredients, if they're slightly off, would be fine, but the yeast is very important. Okay, there's our 4 1/2 teaspoons of bread machine yeast. And now, after we've completed all the ingredients into the loaf pan, we'll take it to the bread machine, turn it on, and after about 3.5 hours, the class can enjoy the bread together as a community and talk about your favorite kinds of bread or ethnic breads that come from different cultures, different types of bread that you can make, sweet breads that you can make for dessert, and you can talk about a variety of baking as well. Thanks for watching my lesson, and I hope you and your children enjoy your bread.